Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Shapita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text? I think we're in, is it the 12th chapter now?
Yes, 12th chapter, number 45.
Can I start?
Please.
Adhyeta vahnirit yatra sannapyagnirna grihyate ayogyavena yogyatvat vaturevatra grihyate. In the sentence, the reciter is the fire, the term reciter cannot actually refer to fire, for the latter is incapable of reciting but must mean a brahmachari who is able to do so.
I have no idea where he's going with this, so let's go on.
Krishoham pushtimapsyami yadav dehatmato chita na putram viniyuktetra pushti hetvanna bhakshane. In such expressions as I am thin and I must get fatter, the body should be taken as the self. For the sake of one's own growing fat, nobody engages his son in eating.
Yes. Oh, okay. So we're back to this argument that the son should be the self, that the idea of the objector is really talking about is the value of ritual something we need to really be concerned about, and where that the son is the self, etc., like that. And here, what Vidyaranya is talking about, this is all allegory. Fire doesn't have a mouth, it means the brahmachari. And here, what he's doing is arguing against that. The major point he's getting at is when we look at the Vedas as an entirety, they always point to the non-dual philosophy of the Upanishads. Everything else is symbolism, temporary practices in order to purify the head and heart, but they are partial truths, always pointing toward the non-dual truth. The self and Brahman are one, that this world is Brahman. All right, going on.
Krishoham, tapasa swargameshyami yadav नेत्रात्मतोचिता anapekshya vapur bhogam charet krichhadikam tatah. In such expressions as I shall attain heaven by austerities, the doer, the intellect sheath, should be regarded as the self. So, ignoring the physical enjoyment, people practice severe austerities.
So again, our confusion. If I think that I am my intellect, I will do this particular tapas. If I think I am the body, I will fatten it or thin it, etc. So all these various references to self have to be interpreted contextually. Now, one of the things that I think is implied in all this, our knowledge is what's important. We don't have to walk through the world with funny speech. Now, there are sects of Buddhists, and they will say, this one is going to the store. This one is going to go to bed now, in a reference to the equipment, so as to cement the idea that I am not the equipment. I don't want to personalize that. But we look at something that's far more ordinary. Did you enjoy the sunset this evening? Oh, yes, Jim, it was beautiful. No, it wasn't. You saw an earth spin. You've never seen the sun set. Yes, Jim, we know that. But we call it a sunset. Oh, the sky is so blue today. Nobody's painted the bowl of the sky blue. So we have language to describe things that aren't the reality. And it doesn't bother anybody. Swamiji would say, pass me the chutney. Is the self getting the chutney? No. So you don't have to talk funny. It's your deeply rooted knowledge that's important. If seriously you are asked, do you know what your essential nature is? How do you answer that? And if your answer is, Chidananda Rupaham, Shivoham, Shivoham, oh, I am this consciousness. I am Shiva. I am auspicious. Then you're on the right track. All right, let's go on.
Mokshye amityatra yuktam chidatmatvam tada puman tadvetti gurushastrabhyam natu kinchikirshiti. When a man says, I shall be free, he then acquires knowledge of the self from the teacher and the scripture and desires nothing else. Here the word I should be regarded as the witness self.
So the idea here is, again, does the self get liberated? Or is it that witness of the phenomenal world, that reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought, or what earlier he is called Chid Abhasa? Both bondage and liberation occur to the Vijnana Mayakosha, subtle intellect. The self is ever free. The self does not get liberated. Understand where that happens. It's the subtle intellect that goes, oh, there's nobody there. wondrous is that? Oh, the sun. Going on.
विप्रक्षित्रादयो यत् विप्रक्ष्यादयो यत् बृहस्पति सवादिषु व्यवस्थितास्तथा गौड्य मिथ्यामुख्या यथोचितम्. Just as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are entitled to perform the sacrifices called Brihaspati, Sava, Rajasuya, and Vaishya Toma, according to their fitness, so the figurative, illusory, and fundamental selves are meant in different contexts.
Yes. So the idea here is we use the word self depending on the context, whether or not we're talking about vyavahara, transactions in the world. I can ask Puneet, how is your coaching project coming?
It's coming along.
Yeah. Is it the self who's having a coaching project? No, that's the world of transactions. So we have to understand what context we're talking about. That's his point. We don't want to confuse the absolute. But the point is, when you are seriously thinking about yourself, now, as you move through the world, if you speak from the absolute, people, one, won't believe you. Number two, they'll think you're crazy or horribly arrogant. So the person of steady wisdom is judicious in his or her speech. Among yogis, going on.
Tatra tatrochite priti ratmanye vatishyanyani anatmani tu tachhepshe pritiranyatra no bhayam. Infinite love is always felt for the self, which is primary in any particular context, and for whatever is related to it, there is just moderate love, and for all other things, there is no love whatsoever.
Yes. So ultimately, I do everything, all activity, gross and subtle, for the love of the self. What does he mean by that? When you get the car, how are you going to feel? Happy. That's my essential nature. You do well on a project of work, how are you going to feel? Satisfied, joyful. That's a taste of yourself. When you eat good food, how do you feel? Oh, very joyful. Yummy in my tummy. Just a taste of the self. What earlier he called Vishaya Ananda. The objects of the world have no inherent pleasure-giving or misery-producing qualities. It's neutral. Shunyata. I attribute those to them. My favorite example, or one of them, is like the dude hitting himself on the head with a hammer. That's like me. I want this, I want that, I want some of this, I want some more of that. Why are you hitting yourself on the head with a hammer? Because it feels so good when I stop. I got what I wanted. Someone said something nice to me. I had a good meal, etc. The bogey, the desire of desires, runs through the world. Low level, discontent, restlessness, virtually all the time. Talking with someone today, he says, Jim, sometimes I just want release. Oh, I find that so fascinating. Release from what? I'm so lonely, I don't have a partner. And then I go into despair. It's all so hopeless. There's so much suffering in the world. And he said the weirdest thing to me, he says, Jim, whenever I ask you how you are, you always say you're fine. You always say you're wonderful. Are you really? Don't you ever have despair? I had to tell him the truth. No. But there's suffering in the world. Yeah? It doesn't have to cause you and me to lose our serenity. Or years ago, I was talking with a young man, and he was all caught up in all these conspiracy things around COVID vaccines. You know, we got to be afraid of this, and big pharma's doing that, and the government's doing this, and you know, you got to watch out. You got to be very careful. You got to be afraid. And I said, stop. I don't live in your world. My world. I live and I move and I have my being in God. It's all okay. I don't get caught up in the dream. I'm no longer tyrannized by craving. You can live in the world you want to. It's your choice. I'm not going there. But that's so foreign to most people. Thing to understand, if I'm suffering, it's because of attachment and identification. Mind tells me I'm unhappy because I'm not getting what I want. Yoga says I'm unhappy because I'm attached, I'm identified. Fool takes out the baseball bat, starts hammering away at life. Yogi. Last night in Gita, we started the Stita Prajna Purusha section. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Which chapter is that?
Chapter 2. Very last verses, 18 verses of chapter 2. In verse 54, Arjuna says, the person of steady wisdom in deep samadhi. How does he walk? How does he talk? How does he sit, etc.? And Krishna answers in 55. When a person casts off all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self. But earlier we heard Brahmananda Rasa Swad. Then he's said to be a person of steady wisdom. That one verse is the entire essence of the path and the goal. It's so simple at the end, not easy. Simple. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Upeksham dveshyamityanyat dvedha marga tridadikam upeksham vyaghra sarpadi dveshamevam chaturvidham. Other things are of two kinds, to be ignored or hated. Straws lying on the road are disregarded, whereas tigers and snakes are hated. So things are of four kinds: loved, dearly loved, disregarded, or hated.
I'm not again sure where he's going with this. He's making a list of how we relate to the phenomena of the world. Let's see what he says.
Atmashesha upekhyam cha dvesham cheti chatushvapi na vyakti niyama kintu tatakarya tatha tatha. The primary self, things related to the self, and objects to be disregarded or hated. Of these four categories of things, there is no sacrosanctity attached to any one of them, that it would always be primary or secondary, etc. But their being primary or secondary, etc., depends on the effect they produce under particular circumstances.
So what he's saying here, whether something is good or bad, neutral or super, super good, depends on the person, depends on the situation, depends on the conditions. The tiger, if you meet him on the road and you're walking, is very different than the tiger you see at the zoo. Imagine there was a time when you walked down the road in India and you run into a tiger. They're an endangered species, I think, in India, aren't they? South Asian tigers, Bengal tigers. Same thing. But yourself is always the most beloved. See what he says about
Syad vyaghra sanmukho dvesho Upekshyastu parang mukha lalana nukula ched cheda vinoda yeti shatam. When a tiger confronts man, it is hated. When it is away, it is disregarded. And when it has been tamed and made friendly, it causes joy. Thus it is related to him and is loved.
same idea. So the conditions determine love, hate, or neutrality. Going on.
Vyaktinam niyamo mamu ma bhul lakshanatu vyavasthitihi anukulyam pratikulyam dvaya bhavascha lakshanam. Even though no thing is primary or secondary by itself, there are some characteristics to distinguish them under certain circumstances. These characteristics are their being favorable, unfavorable, or neither of these.
So what he's talking about is what is suffering, dukkha, and pleasure, sukha. Fundamentally, it'll boil down to this. When the situation is conducive, based on the force of my past and the qualities of my mind, my past conditionings, I interpret that as pleasurable. When the situation is non-conducive, based on the force of my past, the qualities of my mind, my past experiences, it's aversive. It's incredibly mechanical. Well, if someone hits me, is that bad for everybody? Oh, you haven't been to a kinky party south of Market. People really enjoy that. Never know. So what the yogi does, he steps back and he doesn't attribute to the world these absolutist notions. That is good. This is bad. He notices, oh, conducive environment based on the past, mind is happy. Non-conducive environment based on the past, mind is unhappy. No big deal. Then the yogi learns just because the mind has those reactions, you don't have to do anything about it. And in fact, if you're practicing vairagya, you can do something like, okay, let's say you have the klesha of impatience, and it manifests by you're looking at your watch all the time. When the desire to look at your watch arises, when the impatience arises, ego says, why don't those damn people finish? Or so and so isn't here on time. You go, look, impatience arising again. And just notice it and do nothing. What will happen? In time, the charge turns down. After a while, the trigger of the klesha will no longer afflict you. Who's worked on a particular reaction with something like this? Anything they want to share? Last one, my big one. I jokingly tell people I'm a blind backseat driver with a poor sense of direction. I have the habit of thinking I knew how best to get from point A to point B, that people who've been driving for decades just didn't do it as well as I did. Now, that may or may not be true. It's none of my business. I'm a passenger in the car, unless they ask me. So when the thought of wanting to look where we are, which direction are we going, and give advice, just do nothing, do nothing. Done pretty well with it. It's not a huge bad habit. It's just something I like to work on stuff. It's one of my joys. building of character. But a yogi no longer avoids those discomforts. He learns that you can kind of lean into them. Any thoughts on this? Because on the other side always is more freedom. Always.
I think the ability to, at least for me, like being with discomfort was a big one, which is, when something unwanted happens, there's this sort of visceral body reaction, which is an unpleasant sensation. And a part of my mind used to resist feeling the sensation itself, which was like a deep internalized belief that I should always feel pleasant, or there should never be any unpleasantness at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think over time I've realized that the resistance itself created more problems.
Yes.
And so dropping the resistance has allowed me to feel, whatever sensation, and it kind of evaporates much faster because of that.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Sound like a Buddhist. All right, next one.
Atma preyan priya shesho dveshopekshe tadanyayo iti vyavasthito loko yagnavalkya matam chatata. The popular conclusion is that the self is the dearest, the objects related to it are dear, and the rest are either disregarded or hated. This is also the verdict of Yajnavalkya.
I don't know where that's probably something from, isn't he one of the characters in an Upanishad?
I don't know.
I think he is, but I can't remember which one. Anyway, so here he is, he's kind of finishing the idea. And to just make it simpler, I like to say the things of this world are trinkets and baubles. Do we get pleasure out of some of the things of this world? Of course we do. Are some of the things in the world annoying? Maybe somewhat. But for the person who has supreme detachment and can revel in the self, these are so little. There's the surface parts of the mind. You may choose to hang on to a particular habit. Mark may remember this. Swami Chinmayananda used to take snuff. Do you remember that, Mark?
I do.
Oh, it was gross. In the middle of his lectures, and then bring out this orange handkerchief and this brown stuff would come out. It was just gross. But then at some point, the doctor said you can't do snuff anymore, and he stopped. I think Nisargadatta Maharaj was a smoker, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, he died of throat cancer. So you don't get a gold star for burning out some little habit. If it gets in the way of your happiness, do something about it. It's that simple. But what makes the big difference, if you have this Brahmananda Rasa Swad, this Atmaram, again, back to verse 55 in chapter 2 of Gita. When a man casts off all the cravings of the mind, the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self by the self, then he's said to be a person of wisdom. There it is. There it is. Everything we need. Next verse.
अन्यत्रापि श्रुति प्राह पुत्रादिवक्ता तथान्यतः सर्वस्मादान्तरं तत्त्वं तदेतत् प्रेययिष्यताम्. Elsewhere too, the Shruti declares, know this self as the dearest, which is more intrinsic than sun, wealth, and so forth.
So here he's footnoting his conclusion that the self is the dearest. But even when we experience happiness through the objects, it's a lesser joy. And in the end, we see that in fact, it's inherently just myself. I'm getting that mediated taste of the self, as opposed to the non-mediated, the Vishaya Ananda, as opposed to the Brahmananda. Going on.
Shautya Shrotya Vichara Drishtyayaam Sakshyevatman Chetaraha Kaushan Pancha Vivichyanta Vastu Drishti Vicharana. Through the eye of discrimination following the Shruti, it becomes clear that the witness consciousness is the real self. Discrimination means separating the five sheets and seeing the inner substance.
So, from this point where all the scriptures point to the scriptures, it's Taittiriya Upanishad, where you get the exegesis of the five sheaths. We get it in a condensed form in Vivekachudamani. We want to separate the real self from the upadis, the conditionings. Anything that can be known is anatma, not self. Do you see the candle? Yeah, I see the candle. You're not a candle, you're the dude looking at the candle. Okay. The body, Annamaya Kosh. You had a little body, you went through adolescence, you grew up. Some of us have grown old. Body has changed, but I know the change is in the body. Take a deep breath. I know the breath of the body. Object of awareness, not so. Pranamaya kosha. Sometimes I have a lot of energy. Today I was just pumped. Like it was achy to walk practically. Little prana. Times you're full of energy. But I know the pluses and the minuses, the rises and the falls of energy. I am not energy. I am not the Kundalini. I am not the chakras. That's all pranamaya kosha. Manomaya kosha, feelings, judgments, opinions of the world. I know these. One feeling doesn't know another feeling. I know them, not my feelings. Vijnanamaya kosha, with buddhi intellect, where thought takes place. And there, lodged in the Vijnanamaya kosha, is the karta, the agent, the chid abhasa, the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought, as Swamiji used to say. But I see the thoughts, I see ego rise and fall. I am not the Vijnana Maya. We've talked about deep sleep. Deep sleep, the mind is folded up in its seed-like form. But you are not unconscious. You are conscious of pure ignorance. It is like when you close your eyes, you can't see anything in the room, but you are not blind. You are seeing the back of your eyelids, which occludes everything, such as deep sleep. But in the morning, you wake up and you can say, oh, I slept so soundly. I don't remember a thing. The fact that you can remember the absence of knowledge means you were there. All of this, Anna, and Vivekachudamani, the she says, oh, Guruji, having negated everything, there's nothing left. Who am I? And what is it that knows it? Know yourself. To be witness of the five sheaths and all their permutations. But itself can never be known as an object. Yet you are always Swayambhu, self-evident. You stop the mind and introvert the attentive faculty. Your mind just has a momentary shutdown. Then when the mind returns, it has pratyabhignana, recognition. Oh, there's nothing there. The space, pure awareness. That is your true self. Next verse.
Jagara swapna sushupti nagmagama yato bhavat yas savatma swaprakasha chidatmakaha. That is the self-luminous consciousness, the self, which is the witness of the presence and absence of the states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep.
So we just talked about that. That is the self, which is the witness of the presence and absence of all phenomena, gross and subtle. Both the waking, dreaming, and sleep states. And it is there, it is the remnant when in samadhi, the mind is gone, Next verse.
Shesha pranadi vittanta asanastarabhyatah pratistatha taratabhyat teshu sarveshu vikshate. The various objects of enjoyment from life down to wealth are objects of varying degrees of love according to their proximity to the self.
So the dynamic is this. First, the mind determines what it thinks is pleasurable. Technical term is priya. Priya means something is dear to me. I don't know where my little stone is. There it is. So I determine the stone is dear, and that is purely karmic, based on the force of the past and the quality of the mind. What I want is different than what Puneet wants, which is going to be different than Mark or Jory, etc. Then I get proximate, I get close to the desire. This is called moda. So, for example, I asked you, how's your, what are you calling it, a coaching?
Yeah, coaching business.
And where is it now? What's its status?
In progress.
In progress. Moda. You making any money yet?
Not yet.
Successful?
Not yet.
Ready to sell it and retire?
No.
Yeah, moda. But when desire and object of desire become what? Pramoda. The point of pleasure. Oh, and the object is very near, very dear, and it stops my mind. So when it's way out there, not even at the level of Priya, no joy. Priya, oh, I'm going to get a widget. I'm going to start a company. Moving right along, Modan, getting proximate to it. We're cooking. The checks are coming in. And that's with everything in life. From a new company to a recipe you make, someone you date or marry, to the house that you buy. Did your parts ever arrive for your car?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about a long period of Priya, right? How long did it take before they finally arrived? A month?
Yeah, like month and a half.
Yeah. But there's some joy knowing they're coming. But then when they fix the car,
Pramoda.
And there's also a gradation in terms of grossness and subtlety. The grosser the object, the more immediate the pleasure, but it's quite short. So things like food or sex, very immediate, but very short-lived. Loka vasana, feelings, connections, a little bit harder to achieve, but more enduring. So Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter were married 77 years. She died the year before he did. I wonder what his pain was like after 77 years of marriage. I bet it was pretty intense. He only lived a year longer. Very common for very long marriages. Ideas are the subtlest, and they can motivate us for a lifetime. Justice, civil rights, political freedom, religious ideas. And as we like to say, the subtlest of all our ideas is our idea of God. That can make you happy for a lifetime. Next verse.
वित्तात् पुत्र प्रिय पुत्रात् पिंड पिंडात् तथोन्द्रियम् इंद्रयाच्च प्रिय प्राण प्राणादात्मा प्रिय परः. The son is dearer than wealth, the body dearer than the sun, the sense organs dearer than the body, life and mind dearer than the sense organs, and the self is supremely dearer than life and mind.
So here he sets up a category of things that are more dear than others. I'm not sure I agree with him. I don't think it matters. The point here is we see that some things are experiences, they bring us more joy than others. That's how it is with the Vishaya Ananda, bliss that we get through the objects. But in the end, self is what everybody wants. And Gita Krishna says, everybody worships me in every way, just by the wrong methods. The drug addict with a needle in his arm is worshiping Krishna. He just doesn't know it. The politician wanting to win the race is worshiping Krishna. He just doesn't know it. The lover, sensualist, thinks they're having a great mufti-pufti, but they're really worshiping Krishna. They just don't know it. Next one.
एवं स्थिते विवादोऽत्र प्रतिबुन्ध विमूढयोः श्रुत्योदाहारितत्रात्मा प्रेयानित्येव निर्णयः. In the Shruti, there is a dialogue between a wise and a dull-witted man, which illustrates the point that the Shruti is the dearest of all objects.
I don't know what he's talking about, but for this particular thing, it's not the self that's considered the dearest, it's the Shruti. Let's see what he says.
Well, I think it says the self.
Say again.
I think it says the self is the dearest of all objects.
Oh, not the Shruti is the dearest of all objects. Read it again for me in English.
In the Shruti, there is a dialogue between a wise and a dull-witted man, which illustrates the point that the self is the dearest of all objects.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said the Shruti is the dearest of all objects. Yes, the self is the dearest of all. And it's not an object, it's myself. It's the mind that becomes yoked to the self. Giving up the cravings of the mind and then working on being satisfied in the self by the self. There's two parts. Going on.
Saksheva drisyanandyasmat preyanityaha tatvatah preyan putradire mevam prayan putradire vevam bhoktam sakshiti mudhadihi. The wise man holds that the witness consciousness is dearer than all objects. The dull-witted man maintains that sun and other objects are dearer, and that witness consciousness enjoys the happiness caused by these objects.
Yes. So basically, the bhogi who practices bhoga, enjoyment, the dull-witted person, is convinced I am in a state of spiritual poverty, spiritual impoverishment. I am unhappy. What's the matter? I need something. What do I need? All sorts of things. And the problem is everything I acquire only delivers a temporary and partial taste of the self. But then I get attached and want to repeat it. And frequently we get caught in the law of diminishing return. The first piece of chocolate is marvelous. When I eat the whole pound box, I get nauseous. My first $100,000 makes me very happy. Then I'm upset when I don't make my $1 million on target. The yogi understands my suffering and my craving are the same thing. Kama, dukkha. I think they're very far apart. They are identical. It's like the heads and tails of a coin. Listen carefully. The way Nisargadatta Maharaj says it. Worldly happiness and worldly suffering are the same thing. You cannot separate them. World isn't bad. Mind you, the teaching of Vedanta is not life denying. On the contrary, it's all Brahman. But you don't look for something in the world that it cannot give. I was talking with a young man today, and he was depressed again because he thought he was going to have a date, a hookup, I guess they call them, from one of the apps on the phone. And the fellow ghosted him. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, this hookup culture on the apps, it's there's terrible people. They don't keep their agreements, they don't show up and follow through on. This happened to you before? Oh yeah, most of the time. And you keep going back to the apps. What's wrong with this picture? It's illusion that the world can give us anything more than just fleeting little hits. Something there is that's real. Chidananda Rupam. My form is bliss consciousness. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am auspiciousness. I am Shiva itself. Next one.
Atmanonyam priyam brute Shishyascha prativadhyapi tasyotaram vacho bodha shapau kuryanta yokramat. The ignorant disciple and the confirmed opponent both assert that something other than the self Atman is the object of greatest love. The reply given will prove to be an instruction to the disciple and a curse to the confirmed opponent.
I'm not sure what he means by that.
He says the next verse is going to contain.
Okay, let's go on.
Priyatvam rotyati yevam uttaram vakti tatvatit swokta priyasya dushtatvam shishyo veti vivekatah. The wise man quotes the scripture in his reply. Your dearest thing will make you weep. The pupil analyzes this reply and finds out his error in considering something other than the self as the dearest.
Oh, yes. Your dearest thing will make you weep. Oh, I want to be in love. Don't worry. All relationships end in death or divorce. You like your new car? Don't worry. It will become a wreck. Unless you give it to Jay Leno to put in his garage. Got a great job? Don't worry. It will end. You like who's president? Don't worry. It will pass. All delight ends in weeping. So the intelligent person, understanding the impermanence of the world, the limitation of the world, no longer has unrealistic expectations of it. That's the point. Next verse. How many more? We've got about 5-10 minutes left in this chapter. Quite a bit?
Yeah, like
Okay.
25, I think. Alabhya manasastanayah pitarau kleshayechiram labdhopi garbhapatena prasavena cha badhate. When a married couple desire to have a son and do not have one, they are disappointed and miserable. After conception, a miscarriage or the pain of labor causes sorrow.
Yes. So even having the son, which everybody wants, can end in sorrow. And all kids, when they turn 12, 13, I guarantee you who are parents, your IQs will drop 20 points. You will become very stupid in the eyes of your children. Once they hit 22 or 23, your IQs go back up. It's very interesting how that happens. Going on.
Jatasya graharogadi kumarasya cha murkhata upanite pyavidhyatvam anudva hascha pandite. When a son is born, he may suffer from diseases or from the position of the planets at his birth, or he may be stupid or obstinate, or after the investiture of sacred thread, he may study nothing, or if he is learned, he may remain unmarried.
So these are the things that those sons do that vex parents. I have the honor of telling you all, I was a terrible disappointment to my parents. Oh, Jim, you have so much potential. Didn't you get that line? That was a huge disappointment because I was a yogi. They didn't get that. Going on.
Punascha paradaradi daritrayam cha kutumbinah pitro durkhasya nastyanto dhani chenmriyate tada. Again, he may start pursuing the wives of others, or he may have an unwieldy family and remain in poverty, or he may grow wealthy and yet die in his youth. Infinite are the sorrows of parents.
So again, these are if you think having children is the answer to everything, I want a baby. Believe me, they will work every nerve you have. Going on. This is very funny. Life hasn't changed much in 700 years, has it?
Evam vivishcha putradao pritam tyaktva nijatmani nishchritya paramam priti vikshate tamaharnisham. Having considered all this, the disciple must abstain from forming an attachment to other things. He should focus his love on the self and contemplate it day and night.
So I'll just share with you a practice that I used when I find myself longing for something. I would say, no, Jim, that's not what you really want. What you really want is the Lord. Let it go. If I'm lonely or confused or thinking I need this, that, or the other thing, that's not what I really want. What I really want is the Lord. My mind is fooling me. Turn the mind within. Use the appearance of sorrow as a reminder to taste and see the goodness of the Lord, as the psalmist says. Really easy, but for me was a very valuable exercise. This is what we call sublimation. The more normal way of it, kids, it's Friday night, they're in the dorm, their friends come by and say, hey, we're going out for beer and pizza, you want to come? And the kid says, no, I have a paper due Monday, and it's really important that I get a good grade in this class. So they sublimate, they let go of a lesser desire for the greater desire. So the yogi does the same thing. No, my mind is telling me I want this, that, and the other thing. I really want is Krishna. Really want is the You make that a practice as you go through life. Any thoughts on this practice? Going on. Oh no, we'll stop here. It's 9 o'clock. What verse are we on for next week?
69.
69. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.